Welcome to The Ways We Work, a podcast from America Works, where we talk honestly about the job market, the workers we serve, and the systems that shape opportunity throughout the nation. We are back for episode 2. Can you believe you have launched a podcast?
I cannot believe it. I saw that at the Golden Globes for the first time, they gave an award out for podcasts.
Did they?
Yes. And they gave it to Amy Poehler. And it was very interesting because they had a number of people up for the honor. And I guess it's going to become a regular thing at these award shows because podcasts have become such a way to communicate, and it's become another form of not only entertainment but information. And it's a real transformative moment for podcasts.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine if we win one? What will you say?
Oh, my God. Well, they'll probably have to start breaking it down by industry. And so we'll be in that tiny employment sector.
The honorably mentioned.
Right. The small, like there are 3 people up for this award. I think there might have been, they took it from 25 podcasts down to 5 finalists and then gave it to her. I think hers is fairly new. So.
Yeah, that'll be really cool. It speaks to what we're going to talk about today. Because it's become one of the ways we work now. Yeah. New media has opened up so many opportunities for younger people, for second career, mature workers, and everybody in between. And so, but we're going to take things way back to the old days and talk a little bit about how you have seen opportunity change and grow throughout the several decades that you've done this work, and why opportunity still matters now. So last time, as a recap, we talked about why work matters. We talked about the human dignity that work can enhance, the transformation, both in psychology and economically, and the motivation versus the mandates. But we turn our attention now to the structure of opportunity. So what does opportunity matter? Why did it matter then, and why does it matter now?
It's very, very uncommon for the people that we're working with to have received a lot of opportunity. I remember going into an office in Maryland, and they were all completing all these forms. And I said, what are these forms? And they said, well, they're barrier problems. Everybody has all these barriers. And I was like, why are we doing that when people walk in the door? Well, we got this form from the government, and they said, we want to know everybody's barriers. And I remember saying, that's so a horrible way to meet a new person. How would you like it if you were dating and the first thing the person said is, oh, here's what I don't do. I'm a bedwetter until I was 12. I had this problem, that problem. I have been divorced twice.
I don't do dishes. I don't dust.
Yeah, right. But whatever the barriers were. But I said, this is not a way to approach building people's self-esteem. And I don't know what it does for the staff to begin to look at them as, well, he's got 10 barriers and she's got 3, so I guess I'll focus more on her barrier. I mean, it's just not healthy. I did not convince the government. They were like, no, this is required. A new federal law came down to the states, and they want barrier assessments done on everyone so that you can get rid of all the barriers. And so we get into this, which we've encountered a lot. It was like, well, if somebody has a drug problem or someone has a drinking problem, you must cure that problem before they can get a job, which is interesting because studies have shown that anywhere from 20 to 30% of the workforce have those problems and they go to work every day. And your ability to truly cure somebody of those problems is going to be difficult. So we started working with Cornell here in New York because they worked with Wall Street people with all the same problems, but they had to do it at night and on the weekend so that people could go to work. So I said, why can't we do that? Why can't we have people treated, but do it in the evenings and on the weekends so they could still go to work? And of course, that is the real key. The key is to use work along with whatever therapeutic and environments they need to have. And yet, in New York, they were like, "Oh, we can't co-locate people in a drug or alcohol treatment program along with work. We can only enroll them in one or the other." So I ended up having to fight with the city about changing the computer codes, which you would think would be fairly simple, but it took like 2 years so that we could co-enroll people in treatment and work. And of course, the success rate was so much higher when you did it that way.
Right.
And then, as you know, later on, we started to look at whether people come into the program. Let's look at their assets. Let's try to analyze what their assets are. And there was a study done and a system designed by a professor at the University of Pennsylvania for the banking industry, which we then adopted at America Works. They looked at it as something they would give to their employees around management potential.
Right.
But we took that same test and looked at people around their assets and around what they do well and around what the potential is for future. And that has proven very, very successful because it flips that whole barrier assessment. You know, we get to that. And we can't solve everyone's barriers. Often they need housing changes. Often they need additional income so that they have better nutrition and they have food enough for the family. It goes on and on and on. And yet a job will solve 90% of it. So why are we focusing on trying to solve all those barriers, which may not be possible before they get a job? Why not work on it if it becomes a problem? So we would say childcare is an issue for a lot of our people. Let's see what they can do. Let's see how they handle it. Let's get them a job. And then, you know what? Getting a job meant someone in their family was going to help with the childcare. Getting a job meant they were going to find a solution to their childcare problems by registering with a local daycare center. But rather than saying we need to do that and then they can go look for work, get a job, and then we'll solve that problem. Same thing with housing. We did this experiment where we took people before they got into the homeless system, which is a whole shelter system, etc. So as people were coming in, they got into an assessment, which was basically a holding tank. But we said to the city, give us the people while they're being assessed before they enter the shelters. Let us get them a job and get them a place to live. For years, these agencies would go to landlords. Nobody wanted to take someone who was homeless. And apparently, even when the city said they would pay a subsidy for the apartment, the city would take 8 months on average to pay the landlords. The landlords were not going to touch them.
Right.
So we would get people working while they were still in this transition system, not yet in the shelter system. They would then have a paycheck, and we could go to the landlords and say they could pay their rent, they're working. And that was much more successful than the other ways that people had done it. Now, do you think that transformed the way it was done? Because this was a study, and it was studied by HUD in Washington. No, they still do it the same old way, which is go around and see if once they're in the homeless system, whether they could find an apartment. And, you know, there are some subsidy programs or some housing projects that might have an opening here or there, but basically it's not guaranteed. What we do with a lot of our homeless vets is we get them working and then we pair them with another homeless vet so they have two people who have a paycheck. They can double up. We did this with kids aging out of foster care too. We would say, okay, we're going to get you working and then you're going to find a place, but we're going to match you up with someone else. So now you're both working and you can afford, you know, even if it's studio or one bedroom, we can make this work. I mean, there have been studies showing that there is a whole part of the housing market that really does still exist, despite gentrification and other things, that is out there that is renting at much more marginal rates. So that's one of our approaches. I mean, you know from your own family that you got a lot of your opportunities through your family's relatives and
Yes,
friends
my
who
uncle.
had businesses.
Surf boss.
That's the way, even to this day, a lot of opportunities come through networks, through family networks.
Absolutely.
But the people that we're working with don't have those opportunities, or they don't think through that they have those opportunities. But I had done a major survey, it was part of my PhD thesis, that employers prefer networks to hire because networks are really screening in people who are socially going to fit in.
Right.
And as much as skills matter, social interaction and how you get along with your coworkers and whether or not you have the right social skills are as important as any technical skills. And that is part of what a network does. A network is screening for that.
And helping to maintain the positive behaviors associated with being a part of that network, what it values. You know, I want to go back because you hit on something that is so core to adult learning theory. So there's this theorist in adult learning that I've always admired. His name is Robert Keegan. He's big at Harvard, did lots of research in the 1980s, and I'll spare the audience all the details, all the academic details, but he talks about, first of all, adults keep learning. They don't stop learning. You don't stop learning at 20-something or 30-something. You keep learning and growing and developing throughout adulthood, throughout the whole lifespan. And the way that we transform is through these safe containers. America Works is clearly one of those containers and has been for over 40-something years. But in those containers, we get both support and challenge. And I think that that's what you just described. Like, we help people understand the rules of the game and then challenge them to meet their potential within those rules. The question I have for you is, how have the rules changed? And does it still produce opportunity for people?
Over the years, the model we use has been altered and changed. I mean, the first time we started to place people in by the companies, we had somebody on site full time. We worked on a temp to perm contract within a large insurance company in Boston. Everybody got hired internally. We placed another group. We started with 10, we went to 20, we went to 30, we went to 40 at a time. And that model continued probably until the 1980s. And at that point, things started to change. The type of workplaces started to change. Even in the 80s, we had times in which the employers were small employers that could take one person in at a time. The massive clerical opportunities that we used to place people in, which was almost everything, was it could be file clerks, it could be somebody answering the phone as a receptionist. Those jobs started to get smaller and smaller. Although, as with anything that the government funds, they were still training people, typing skills, and then computer data entry skills, and then it was, but always the training would come about 3 years after the job ended. It's like right now we have tons of people who become people who are working as a medical assistant, doing just billing and all. And again, jobs got combined into many other things. Jobs changed, and so you had to stay ahead of it. As a performance-based contractor, when the employment sector was, high unemployment, we got great candidates. And the big issue was finding job openings. So we would actually switch. We would take the sales staff, expand the sales staff, reduce the recruiting staff, and then as it went back to low unemployment, there were tons of jobs, smaller sales staff, and much larger recruiting staff. So we had the opportunity to constantly bounce back and forth between openings. And the thing about the job market is it is constantly adjusting and changing. Yes. And you really have to stay ahead of it. My first professional job after graduate school was as a manpower planner.
Yeah.
Manpower. That was the name of anybody who worked in the workforce. It didn't matter if they were a woman or a man, but they called it manpower. It was a government title. And so I would sit there looking at job growth statistics. And I was working for a mayor north of Boston in a city called Salem, Massachusetts. And I would look at all the Bureau of Labor statistics. And at that time, the whole industry, the fishing industry, the clamming industries, which were a large part, and factories. In fact, my office was in an old shoe factory in Salem that had been converted into office space. So you have all these people who are unemployed who had worked in that industry. I'm looking at the government's labor statistics saying, well, we can get some, people working technology. No, the types of jobs I needed to find for these individuals were not found as big job growth areas. I had to really find other opportunities, which we were able to do basically by getting old-fashioned shoe leather, getting out of the office, going around, knocking on doors, talking to employers. Do you have an opening? What are you looking for right now? Mm-hmm. And that's basically the way in which we had to conduct our job search. There were no computer programs. There were help wanted ads in the newspaper. And so we got all the newspapers every day. And depending upon which newspaper you were looking at, you would have entry-level jobs. You would have temp agencies and other things. But it was a real process of going out and meeting with the employers. But what that gave us was a sense of the workplace, what the people are really looking for, who works there. If we've got a young person who's extremely introverted, we know that a lot of customer work, direct customer work, or phone work is probably not the right job. But also if the salesperson has gone in and seen that there are all young people working in this one location, and they do have a really great training program to get people answering the phones and doing customer service, that this person could stand a good chance of learning some skills. And then it's our job to basically sell that employer that, to give that person a chance. The biggest transformation came in the New York job market right after 9/11.
Yes. With the shift to security work.
Right. There were all the jobs we had, the kind of backroom insurance jobs, banking jobs, things that people with just high school degrees could do, came to a screeching halt. And we were working with a lot of people who had been in the Twin Towers or in that neighborhood as businesses had shut down. But the big thing that we found for the typical client we had was that it went towards not only security, but it also went towards large installations where people kept their records over in New Jersey. So there was a lot of shipping and loading and unloading of paper files because everything was still on paper. Even when we worked with the government, they would not allow us to keep computer files. We had to have paper files to back up the computer files. So we might have both.
Right.
Luckily, most government agencies aren't doing that with us anymore. But it's always a type of constant transformation. And the big thing right now is the damn HR departments. I mean, human resources has become much more of, here's a test that my company designed with my help, and this test is going to screen the people we need. So you have to take this test, and if you don't pass this test, you're not going to get to the next level, which is an interview. So people have to go online, they have to complete their applications online, then they have to usually take some kind of a test. It might be psychological, it might be to try to get you to be tricked into saying you're going to steal something. I mean, the test could be very, very hard to get through.
Yeah.
But it's impersonal because you find that the companies wanted screened. They wanted to go into a massive centralized job board where everyone who's applied is in a queue. Mm-hmm. And that's sorting that has been a really big change for the people that we're working with.
So a couple things. I want to hear about the people you think would be rejected by a system like that had they not have us working on their behalf. But I also want to go back first to what you alluded to regarding the old strategy, which some workforce service providers had in the old days, and some might still have now, that I think we never adopted, right? I heard someone describe it as the train and pray approach. You know, you would like train, and just hope that the jobs are available when the person is finished with the training. Now, I'm proud to say that we've never had that approach, and we always work to construct and engage the labor market so that there's a good fit for clients.
Well, that used to be whenever we had visitors and, before welfare reform was passed, and we were doing this work versus Boston and then New York, people would visit us from all over the world just to see what we did. And the first thing I would do is take them into a classroom of 50 people. And I would say, how many of you had been through a training program before? And everybody would raise their hand. And then I'd say, how many have been through more than one? And everybody would raise their hand. And did these training programs ever get you a job? And nobody would raise their hand. And the people would go, you're kidding me. What was going on? And I used to say, it's like poor training for poor people. It's just in a vacuum. These training, they give them a piece of paper. You've got this. You went through this training program. And then they would expect them to go out and try to find employers that would hire them. And there was little thought given to that end of the spectrum. So we started to put all of our effort into that end of the spectrum, which is meeting the employers, creating an environment that was going to welcome people, convincing the employers that, when you go to hire someone, what do you have? You have someone walks in, they fill out a resume or an application, they hand it to you, you don't know anything about them, you don't know whether they're reliable, you don't know their attitudes. We have them for months before we even send them out to you, so we can tell you that they know how to show up on time, that what their attitudes are like, what they've learned while they're with us, why they're worthy of at least you interviewing them, and really put the best foot forward for the person before they walk in the door. And that makes such a difference. So they're not walking in coldly. They're walking in with somebody who already said, I want to at least talk with this person. So it makes their chance of success so much greater than if they were just forced to go out by themselves and hand out resumes. And which even to this day, if you get on unemployment, you have to go and prove, I guess, once a month that you made certain kind of interview.
Right.
So unemployment offers you a computer with job openings, and you sit there and make some phone calls and maybe drop off some resumes to show that you've done this type of work and that you've looked for a job. But it's somewhat meaningless until they get to the point where unemployment is going to run out and they have to get a job. And then
Right.
they become differently energized. But it's complicated. And hiring fairs, which seem like a great idea, we conduct our own, but we conduct them with people with actual job openings that we've worked with, that we know, where we can pre-screen people before we send them to the hiring manager. We're in a big, huge conference center where all these employers are there. As again, survey the employers, which I did. They're there because their boss told them to be there. Do they have openings? Maybe. Do people get called back for second interviews? Sometimes. But they're there because it's part of their job. They get out of the office for the day and they get free coffee and lunch and whatever else. And they then go back to their office. But it's a very difficult environment because people are moving so quickly.
Yes.
Records get lost. They trying to keep track of who they interviewed and make some things on a resume so that they can call people back in. But it's a complicated process, and even with computer technology and all, it's still very difficult to do. So again, our approach generally has changed because of technology changing, but it's still personalized and getting to know the employers, which a lot of people don't understand how important that is. They just think it's not that. Oh.
Yeah. And it absolutely makes a difference for the match, right?
Yeah.
Like what you're describing is this big hall of all of these employers and nameless candidates half of whom may not connect with anyone in the room afterwards makes it really hard to find a good match. Even if some people connect, they may not be a good fit, and all this time is wasted when they could be connected to an employer that could be putting them to work right in a matter of a couple of weeks. So I guess jumping forward to now, how do we make sure that certain special populations don't get lost in the hyper technologicalized world? I don't even know if that's a word. The highly technological world
Yes.
of recruitment, and which is moving towards being 100% driven by AI now. How do we make sure that certain special populations who might be at a greater disadvantage, those who've been justice involved, those with disabilities, those who have multiple other barriers, that they don't fall through the cracks, and they have the greatest opportunity to get the highest wage for the skills that they have?
That, I think, is, again, a matter of really trying to personalize everything that you do. I mean, the employer is the end goal. They're as much a customer as the people who come in the door looking for work. So you have to really develop those relationships. I had experiences where, people would start at top, like say, okay, we're going to get a bunch of CEOs together and they're going to create a number of businessmen who are going to actively hire people. And you'd say, oh, that's great. At this company, I must start. Go to the president's office, or just, go talk to the general manager. And yeah, he's always putting my name out there to hire some of these people because he gets tapped by the mayor or the governor or the president to sit on a council. But I don't have time for this. I'm sorry. Or here, this person's hiring. Go meet with this person. And there's very little commitment for the company that's tapped in that political environment to do some hiring. You still got the people on the ground trying to get the job done. So I'd much rather start at the bottom, get one successful candidate, advertise the heck out of it to everyone else, turn that one supervisor into the internal spokesperson who can then go and be inside the company saying, this worked for me, I really encourage you to provide it. I mean, when we started, often they'd say, oh, you have to hire people because they're poor. You have to hire these people because they're black. You have to hire these people because they're handicapped. You have to hire these people. And employers would say, do you know how sick we are of that? I really care about getting a good employee in here. And if it happens that they meet these other criteria, that's great, but that's my first and foremost thing. I'm trying to get my job done, and that job involves getting business out the door every day. And I'm not a social service agency. And I would hear a horror story after horror story about dump them and run. All these organizations do is dump these people on me. I get these summer students in here from the inner city, and, there's no support. I don't even know who's showing up half the time. I'm not a babysitter. So I realized that, this is such an important relationship that has to be nurtured. And again, once you get an internal advocate, that's worth everything. Once one manager has said, this has been successful for me, and I can rest easy, because I had a problem with an employee. Within an hour, somebody from the organization was on site talking to the employee, and ultimately they found me someone else. And I didn't even have to do anything about it. It was really handled for me. Things that make their lives easier and make sure that we get the best employees there, that's really what they care about. The president may care about meeting these political goals, the president of their company or the top people, but really you have to prove yourself at that entry level and then create the advocates and then bring it to the president. I mean, we do this one thing because a lot of our people apply and are eligible for tax credits. We save the companies a lot of money. So at the end of the year, we send letters to the heads of the companies saying, because of this manager in your department, you have saved X dollars this year in labor costs because you've gotten tax credits for hiring certain people. That means more to that manager and to that CEO than all the other kinds of things you could do. because they're in the business. It's just like we're in the business,
Right.
to get the best product out there for the best price. And so those are the things we do that I think a lot of people forget about. And government agencies can't really do because, they have to deal with everyone. So there are one-stops. We actually manage some one-stops in the different states.
Yes.
And they're very complicated because everybody who's unemployed walks in the door and they have to show that they're doing job search. And that becomes just a whole thing in and of itself, but to keep their unemployment checks coming. So it's interesting. I mean, this whole complex of things is of interest.
Well, what has always fascinated me is the magic, and I could never describe what it is. I think you do an excellent job at describing how breaking down the magic or demystifying it. But it always looked like magic to me when I first started working for the company. And we deal with such massive volume of clients, whether it's through one-stops or TANF programs here in New York or ticket to work programs throughout the country. We deal with mass volume of clients.
Right.
And so many clients are skeptical about whether we can actually give them opportunity. Either they've been so disappointed by failed attempts at trying to find a job, or they've been a part of the system for so long, so they have system fatigue, or they have been burnt by other kinds of service providers or entities or government offices that they're just really mistrusting of the system as a whole when they walk through our doors. But somewhere in that process, we're able to assess their strengths, provide some training for alignment, upskilling, identifying the opportunities, prepping and polishing, and people find one opportunity and they build on another and another and another. And as you say, in a matter of 4 months, it can totally transform someone's relationship to the job market and their relationship to their own life and their social demands as parents, as elder care providers for people in their own family. I'm just always amazed by how that works. Because we have to do both, right? Like we have to meet this huge need. There are many, many people who have a need for work to live and survive in this city and other cities.
Right.
And yet still it seems like there are fewer and fewer jobs that can help people meet those needs. So what is the magic?
I used to say that the educational system, which most of the people had gone through at some level, they did not know what the rules were to get them out successfully. Things came at them. They were confused. They weren't doing well. They didn't know how to kind of meet the bare minimum to get themselves through everything. So the sense of failure when they dropped out of school and the sense of people around them, and the fact that they didn't even know what they had done wrong, made me think one of the most important things we can do is to be absolutely clear that these are the things you have to do. You have to come here, be on time. You have to be dressed professionally as much as we can do. We're going to help you get professional outfits. You have to be awake and listening. And if there's a problem, if you can't come in, you have a way to get excused for the day, because we all have other things that come up. We have illnesses, we have family obligations. So you have to just let us know in advance or as that day happens. And it seems like a small thing to be so clear, but we would reiterate this over and over again so that people knew that they had to play their part. And then we were going to get the opportunity. We guaranteed everyone was going to get an opportunity to go to work. What it was and how we were going to get there, that was the journey we were going on with them as they entered into the program. And as you know, for us, the average person is with us for about 4 months. But the average person also doesn't take the first job and stay with it. They have to try that job out. And then they get them second opportunity. And sometimes we have to give people as many as 4 opportunities. But I know, Joel, that some of the training you've done have really had people explore what went wrong as they've had jobs in the past.
Right.
And again, this makes, for people who don't understand why they lost the job, it makes it clearer for them. They think, well, I don't know why. I guess my supervisor didn't like me. And then as you probe further, you find out, well, were you responsive to your supervisor? One of our biggest problems is people ask too many questions in the workplace. So we would coach people to just say, keep a list of your questions, go once a day, ask the questions, especially if you've been there for a while, so you're not bothering your supervisor all the time. Be careful in retail, we would tell them, because there are going to be people stealing things. Apparently, biggest problem retail establishments have is the people who work there steal things. So making clear what the rules of the game are and what you can do to basically handle yourself correctly and relearning all of that, that's as important as your resume and your interview. So a lot of the programs, especially initially, they gave people a resume, a rough draft, and they gave them, if you can believe it, they were given telephone books and told, go for it, start making phone calls, and that was their training.
Yeah, you
that
mentioned
was a very common thing.
You mentioned that last time, and I couldn't believe that was the strategy.
Yeah, it was called job clubs. They operated them in every city and every state all over the country. And that was a main strategy. And as you can imagine, somebody who's not been able to find their own jobs being handed the yellow pages, which I don't even think we produce them anymore.
No,
but
not that I've seen.
But that was, there'd be somebody, coaching them, like, try and call another one, just open to any page. Just start calling. And it was like, hang up. No, don't you feel good? Come back tomorrow. No, you don't feel good. Rejection is probably the worst thing.
Right. And so what occurs to me in this conversation, that opportunity is more than just the job itself. It's the container that allows someone to carry themselves to and through the job. Right. And that looks so different in different parts of the country. In some parts of the country where we operate, despite the best intentions of the clients themselves, the government entities and the systems in place, transportation is just challenging in some cities. In some other cities, childcare is just incredibly challenging. In others, housing is incredibly challenging.
Right.
But what I find incredibly inspiring is that we work with clients and meet them wherever they are.
I know the new mayor of New York just lost a bid to take subsidized housing and rent-controlled housing and have real estate developers take them over. Some judge who had half a brain said, this is not going to work. I think the residents were up in arms too, because real estate developers are not going to keep the rent-controlled apartments rent-controlled. So I'm not sure what the long-term plan was on that, but
on the plus side, we have 2K here now in New York State, and some of the childcare issues are going to be addressed. But, we work in so many different...
you're talking about,
free universal childcare.
It's, education, early childhood. It's the 3 program that de Blasio put in place.
Right, so now they've moved it up a year, and I think...
To 2.
To 2.
There aren't enough slots. All right, let's just get real on this. I mean, it's a great idea. A lot of small towns in richer neighborhoods have put those into the public schools. But I know in New York, it's not universal because you have to find a place that has an opening, and the number of people who need it versus the number of slots that are here. So that it's nice they're now moving it, but it would have been nice if they took care of the 3s. And, it's not the easiest thing to do. But I think it's a great idea, but we don't have universal in New York City.
So I want to talk a little bit about some of those special populations, like the justice involved population, and where we've been meeting them in the last few years. You know, you mentioned Baltimore on a call that we were on recently. And I know we have a bail diversion program there. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and how we generate opportunities for people there.
It goes back to the creation of welfare reform. The women who we were working with would come to their first classes, sometimes with their kids because they didn't have childcare, but also they came with either their partner or their boyfriend or their brother or there was always a man who was accompanying them on the initial visits. And their question was constantly, why don't you have anything for us? Why is it always just for, sister, wife, partner? She gets all these opportunities.
The mother of my child.
All that. And I would say you're right. That should not be. So at the point at which we got welfare reform passed, the 96 bill, we advocated very, very strongly that the population of the non-custodial fathers was a population heavily involved in the criminal justice system. So where we had welfare system for those people who are women with children, we had the criminal justice system for men. And we wanted to basically be able to take the men who were going into prison and had this tremendous child support payments they weren't making because they were incarcerated, so they would come out with debt and all kinds of things. And we wanted to basically meld the two programs together as one so that we would work with the fathers and the mothers. In that point in the 90s, the child support collection was done basically by the attorney generals of every state. And there was confidentiality around who was in that system. So we could not get lists of people who were the non-custodial fathers because of the privacy issues and God knows whatever else. And that became a huge problem because there was we won like 2 major contracts in 2 different states to just deal with that population. And yet we couldn't get the lists of people. So we finally just had to give the money back and go back to the drawing board. And the drawing board was to go directly to people incarcerated and develop programs for people on their way out. So we've done that throughout the country over many years now. And often they are the fathers of children in the public assistance system, and often they have huge outstanding bills. They now have bills for everything, for their phone calls. If they come out and they have to have an ankle bracelet, they get charged for that. They get charged for soap while they're in prison. So they come out with this debt that's unbelievable. And a few different places have really addressed it. New York City has for years had a program where they reduce the debt and they spread it out over a longer period of time. They get people their licenses done because, you're incarcerated, you can't be a barber. You're incarcerated, you can't drive a car. It goes on and on. So they've actually have a program to expedite all that. And it's very successful, but it's in very few places. So about 10 years ago, we were in Maryland, and there was a young judge there, and she said she was interested in the fact that so many young people in the city of Baltimore were going into prison. And we came up with the concept, which she then backed us on, which was bail, diversion, and reform. When the person could not post bail, and they had been convicted of a crime, not convicted yet, but he had been accused of it, if they couldn't post bail, they were doing time in prison. So we went to the initial judge with the proposal that we would take them before they went into prison and learned all the terrible things prison teaches you, and we would get them working. And so over the years, it has been so successful. It's expanded from that one judge to about 70 other judges, and the judge loves it because they're doing something positive. These are mostly young men, and they end up coming back to the judge
when their hearing date has come up for their whatever crime they committed, and they have a suit on, they have a resume, and their boss comes, along with family members. In almost 93% of the cases, everything's been dismissed. They never get sentenced for whatever this was. And their only obligation is to come back and see the judge on a regular basis and just say hello and tell them how things are going. But it's a much better system than to just throw people into a prison situation for which they come out a much more hardened criminal than they went in the door.
And filled with more barriers.
Yeah, still barriers.
Right.
More barriers.
To assess.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have been doing this with a lot of success. We publicized the program. Places like the city of New York or the state of New Jersey just said, okay, we're going to get rid of bail. Okay. So wait, you don't have a program to get someone working. You don't have any requirements. You're just going to let them go back into the street? And so now we have a situation in New York where police officers are petrified to arrest people because the next thing that happens is they're back on the street because they don't go into jail. They don't have to pay bail. They got rid of bail. So there's no hook except that pending date down the line for a hearing. But there are no services put in place. There's no program to help them get working. There's no requirement. I mean, one thing great about the judge's involvement is they let them know, you're going to quit this job, you're going to just disappear one day, we're going to find you, or you're going to have to go into jail. You need to have especially not only the opportunity, but you need to be able to drive it with something. So we're big advocates for this process of bail reform, but done in the right way. And you can't just assume that people can just go back into the street, because what are they going to do? I remember asking the former police commissioner, Bratton. I said to him, what is going on? I'm walking down the street. There are people, a man had his pants down under his bottom. He was screaming that he wanted to kill people. 2 officers walked by him. They did nothing. He said, they're not allowed to do anything. I said, what do you mean? So there was a law passed where, unless somebody actually has a weapon and tries to hurt someone, they're not allowed to do anything. I said, but that person needed to go to the Bellevue Hospital or someplace. And so I don't know what all the answers are, but I know that this isn't working. And I know what we're doing in Baltimore is working. So, and I think the applications in California, I fought really, really hard with the probation department that they could send people to us. But I wanted the requirement to be, you have to get a job. It has to be, there are all these things on the list. I don't know if you've ever seen the release papers. It says, you must do this, you have to be clean, and so you can't associate with people with criminal records. It goes on and on and on. Could you please put in that you have to actively look for work? Because without that, they're going to end up going right back into prison for a new crime. And we were able to make that change. But it shouldn't even be a question. I fought with the state of New York around that for people on parole or probation. They never would make the change. And so there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, there's so much work to be done still.
Right. To really frame opportunity as one that helps a person find, get, and keep a job.
Right.
Really. So we, as you alluded to before, have an assessment that we use that helps us frame someone's strengths, or at least start to have a common language for that. It's called the VIA Character Strengths. And I've been so excited about it for 8 years now that I've been working for the company, and I first did mine. You've known me for quite some time. Can you guess what my strengths might be?
Give me a list of what the possible strengths are.
In fact, I have one right here.
Oh, okay.
And actually, I think I want to guess yours too.
Okay.
So let me see if I have my list here as well. So they're broken down into 6 broad categories: wisdom and knowledge, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. And for those listening who are familiar with a lot of strength assessments, there are many out there on the market. And I think we had been looking through quite a few before we settled on this one. But the thing that really struck me with this one is that it's not just about aptitude, it is about character. And everything builds on character, right? I mean, you can have all the skills in the world. At the end of the day, the decisions you make and the interactions that you have with people is shaped by character, right? And so it's built on some old-fashioned wisdom that break character down into some common categories. And so those are the 6: wisdom and knowledge, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. I mean, I'm a trainer. I'm sure you can guess which is on the list for most trainers, right?
Yes and no. I mean, I think one of your skills is you're able to draw other people out. You make people comfortable enough. I mean, it used to be the thing about Joel Thomas is people would come out of your classes with everyone crying, even the most hardened men. Everybody would be in tears. So I know that you have an ability to get right to the heart of the matter and also have people be their own judge. Let them judge themselves from what their life experiences have been, right, and to face them honestly. And I think that is a skill that has to do not only with your leadership skills, but with your humanity and your humility, because you never put yourself above the other people. You're always letting them know that you're human as well. But obviously, you're very kind, and that comes across. And so people feel they can open up to you.
You know what's funny about this assessment?
Yeah.
Is that when you first do it, it might surprise some people because I always tell clients, it lists all of the strengths from 1 to 24, and they focus on the top 5. And I was a little upset because there are some things I value incredibly, like humanity, like
Right,
social intelligence, like love, that I was upset was not in the top 5. But what I realized and what I've learned in coaching myself and taking the training on how to institute these assessments is that just because something isn't in your top 5, it doesn't mean it's not important to you. It just means that it does not take as much energy for you to perform the things that are in the top 5. When I first started at America Works, perseverance was like number 24. It wasn't, I had all kinds of quit in me. Now, they say, too, that these things are built on neuroplasticity.
yeah,
Big word for
fluid.
it's fluid. It can change over time.
Yeah,
I'm
and
sure.
it should change over time.
Absolutely. And that's also what we do when we work with clients is help them recognize that, you know, different environments or going back to the reference from Robert Keegan, different containers in your life, in your adult life, bring out and enhance certain strengths and skills and values. And so over time, I'm sure perseverance has moved up the list for me. But ironically, you know, you say I don't judge, and I pride myself on being non-judgmental, but judgment is actually in my top 5. But I realize it's because I judge situations, not people.
Right.
Right? I hold people to their potential, and I recognize that because it's from my skill of excellence and mastery.
Right.
I care about people living up to that potential.
Well, I hear that from your staff. You're pretty tough on your staff in terms of what you expect. And that sort of flies in the face of some of your other qualities. But that's a good thing. What I like about this is people do it for themselves.
Yes.
So what I often see, and I see this with our clients, it's aspirational. It's not necessarily how someone else would evaluate
Right.
them, but it's what they want to be. Because one of the things we do is we take these characteristics, right, and we put it in front of people. We put it on their resumes.
Yes, we help frame it. Yeah.
And staff put it on their desks, and they start to become that person.
Absolutely.
And that's also a great quality for this particular form of assessment. So it does give you a sense of thinking through what the qualities you want to show other people, because a lot of us go through our day-to-day and you're not thinking about how you appear to others and what people think of you.
You have given me the opportunity to focus on my top 5, right, and those in the lower tier as well. And I think that's to circle back, really, like, that is probably the magic of our work, is that we don't just talk about barriers. We generate solutions with employers, with other service providers, with municipalities and policymakers. We don't just assess strengths. We find opportunities to bring strengths alive and convert those into talents and earned income and all other kinds of benefits. So now that we're moving into a new space where a lot of people are fearful that work may not present the same kinds of opportunities because of AI now, what do you hope we won't stop doing?
Well, I kind of had this experience my whole life where every new technology that came along, we think the whole world is going to become less effective. You know, I grew up in a home in which I wasn't allowed to watch TV. And it's like, my father was a true believer that TV was going to make us all dumber. And, you know, he particularly didn't like all the shows that were on TV that were Father is an Idiot, like Father Knows Best, where Father was always making mistakes. So
Archie Bunker. Right?
Yeah, I mean, all these things. So, and then by the time my parents had 6 kids and my brother came along, he watched TV constantly while he painted. And he's a very famous painter living in Italy at this point. Still has a TV on every time I call on it. You know, that's how he paints. And so I was always going to say to him, but I never could get the courage, what did you think TV was going to be so bad that, you know, none of us were going to do. And then you let David watch TV. At night, you sat with him and watched old movies while he painted. I mean, it's like, and he said, I know. And then, you know, comes with the computers, and now we're all worried about kids and social media, and now we're worried about AI. And if you let these things take over your life, or believe that they're going to take over everything, it might. But, you know, this is part of the way we grow and change, too.
Right.
And AI has proven to be so helpful at work. We have used it to help us create new systems and create time getting jobs done. It's provided endless personal comfort to many people who consulted on everything. This happened, what should I say? He'll tell you what to say.
Yeah.
I need to write a letter and I'm really upset about something. How do I write it in a way I get change, not get this person mad at me? They'll write the letter for you. I mean, so it's on so many different levels helpful, and I'm not really afraid of it. I know there are people who feel they're going to write sitcoms and they're going to take creative projects that are going on, especially in the writing sphere, and eliminate those jobs. I think it'll expand opportunities for other people like everything else has. We thought computers were going to make jobs go away, and turns out it created a whole new set of jobs.
Right.
So I think that answers your question, sort of. But I know that people are really afraid of the AI. And you designed a class for the people who don't even have computer skills to teach them how to use AI, to help them write letters, to write their resumes. You did this a year ago. So, you know, did our staff jump up and down and said, I had a job writing resumes along with 50 other things I was doing. How did you take that away from me by teaching them how to do it through AI?
They surely did not say.
Right. They just get other work to do. Right. There's always more work.
This is a good place to stop. but we will be back with more conversations that build on how we keep creating opportunity in the future.
Great. Thank you, Joe.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.